South China Morning Post, 16th of July 2023, why underdeveloped African countries are eager to join the growing BRICS club. The question of whether Russian President Vladimir Putin will attend the BRICS summit in South Africa next month, where an arrest warrant has been issued for him by the International Criminal Court, will be a significant topic of discussion around the world. But for many African nations, the summit represents a chance for something much more significant. Egypt, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Algeria, Nigeria, Sudan, and Tunisia are just a few of the African states that have expressed interest in joining the BRICS, a group of developing nations that was founded in 2009 and consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Saudi Arabia, Belarus, Iran, Mexico, Syria, Turkey, and Venezuela are just a few Latin American, Middle Eastern, and Eastern European economies vying to join. Argentina claimed last year that China had officially endorsed its application to join the BRICS. The union has grown more alluring as a fresh setting for diplomacy and money for international development. According to analysts, many nations, particularly those in Africa, view it as a group that can challenge the dominant US and European-led global governance systems. There is growing discontent about the West's control of financial institutions, which China has helped to cultivate, given that BRICS members comprise around a quarter of the world's GDP and more than 40% of the world's population. Leaders from the Global South expressed their concerns during a discussion at the Summit for a New Global Financial Pact, which took place in Paris in June. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, remarked during a speech to the summit, "Some people get afraid when I say that we need to develop new currencies for commerce. Therefore, if it's up to me, this topic will be discussed at the BRICS meeting. To make this conversation successful, more African colleagues must attend." President Lula: "Don't worry, the issue of currency is top of the agenda when we have the BRICS meeting in August," said South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in response. "Therefore, we will talk about it." Ramaphosa added that a firm agreement was required to overhaul the world financial system. "Most of the internal or shareholder directors on the boards of your multilateral institutions are not independent." He referred to the World Bank and IMF as necessary reforms in and of themselves. Other African leaders made such calls, like Kenyan President William Ruto and Congo-Brazzaville President Denis Sassou Nguesso. When South Africa hosts the 15th BRICS summit next month, the topics of a BRICS currency and the entry of new members to the group will be on the agenda. There was much anticipation that the BRICS meeting would include a new currency. Still, Mihaela Papa, assistant professor of sustainable development and global governance at Tufts University in the US, claimed no BRICS-wide agreement existed. She cited Subramaniam Jaishankar, the foreign minister of India, as saying unequivocally that his country had no such plans. The summit is relevant for exploring how to jointly respond to major global issues, strengthen local BRICS currencies and cross-border trade, and manage BRICS expansion, added Papa. Xen Araki, an economics professor at the University of Nairobi, stated that many nations saw the BRICS as an opportunity to break free from political and economic dominance by the West. He claimed that developing nations China and India saw Africa as their new playground. He predicted that they would try to impress Africa with gifts like aid, lenient loans, or commerce. New members would be problematic because of their expectations and loyalty. According to Cameron Hudson, a senior associate with the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, joining the BRICS gave African nations a chance to join other Global South nations with many of the same issues and viewpoints. According to Hudson, it is apparent that African nations are interested in a more multipolar world that would give them more influence over issues like climate change, development financing, and international politics. He added that in addition to initiatives to restructure the current global power structures at the G20, United Nations, IMF, and World Bank, many regarded the BRICS as an additional means of aiding in advancing their goals. As an illustration, Egypt, experiencing a financial problem, formally sought to join BRICS in June. According to Georgy Borisenko, the Russian ambassador to Egypt, Cairo sees the BRICS' emphasis on currency as a critical justification for joining. He said that the maximum transfer of commerce to alternative currencies, whether national or the formation of some expected cash, is one of the projects that BRICS is now working on. The country of North Africa joined the BRICS New Development Bank in February, and the 5 original members are now shareholders. While Uruguay is a potential member, Bangladesh and the UAE are recent members. In June, Ethiopia applied to join the group as well. Ethiopia is still healing from the terrible Tigray War. According to Paul Nantulia, a research associate at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University in Washington, some prospective new members, like Iran, which is subject to severe sanctions, seek to increase their global connections to avoid exclusion. He claimed that other nations like Ethiopia, Algeria, and Egypt were furiously vying for new international markets. To fulfill its self-perceived position as an undervalued regional power, Indonesia, according to Nantulia, aimed to strengthen its regional standing as part of a foreign strategy to seize international leadership. According to him, one of the main reasons certain nations wanted to join the bloc was to strengthen their ties to China. Some of China's closest allies in Africa think, rightly or wrongly, that closer ties with China can increase the influence of African nations at the multilateral level, Nantulia added. According to him, Saudi Arabia sought to deepen and broaden its connections with China, making membership in BRICS attractive and vital. Similar reasons drove Argentina's actions. Many nations, especially those in Africa, had long wished for a multilateral organization that mirrored the interests of the Global South, according to Joe Sullivan, a former official in the White House. They perceive a chance for this dream to come true in the BRICS. And they're excited to join it, Sullivan said. There are some obstacles, so it won't be all plain sailing. According to observers, although Brazil and India worry about losing influence in the BRICS, which they feel would benefit Beijing, China, Russia, and South Africa favor a bigger BRICS. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that the 14th BRICS summit in Beijing had backed negotiations on the bloc's expansion in April when Tunisia revealed it was considering joining. According to ministry spokeswoman Wang Wenbin, China will continue to uphold the BRICS spirit of openness, inclusivity, and win-win cooperation, jointly advancing the BRICS expansion process. According to Sullivan, the geopolitical rivalry among the BRICS members is real but unlikely to prevent new members from joining. All of the BRICS benefit from bulking up their membership, he said, adding that problems would only arise if a potential member were considered a rival satellite and sufficiently robust in its own right to matter. In the meantime, Papa said that BRICS remained resilient even at the pinnacle of the China-India border conflicts in 2020 thanks to its internal procedures and focus on multilateral activities. New members have the potential to alter the composition of BRICS. Thus all member nations must agree on their acceptance and the group's course for the future. When China and India disagree, it is more difficult to reach this compromise, according to Papa. While China supports growth, it's also vital to consider its drawbacks and risks, so differences now are healthy. But a strong BRICS might act as a counterweight to the G7, a group of nations that includes the US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK. It may also act as a counterweight to other Western-led multilateral organizations. The ability of the BRICS to act as a G7 or G20 for the Global South, according to Sullivan, is what gives the group its power. He claimed it would enable its members to coordinate responses to multilateral organizations with a strong Western influence, such as the G7 and G20. and he asserted that BRICS will gain bargaining strength due to the capacity for coordination in critical areas like development finance through the new development bank, infrastructure finance through affiliated organizations like China's Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which has a growing membership of African countries, and currency swap agreements between China and Russia. According to Nantulia, the bloc is providing natural alternatives. However, despite its increasing influence, as China had hoped, BRICS was still far from successfully competing with the G7.